The birth of the Mafia, ancient roots.
The Mafia didn't appear overnight. Its roots go back centuries, to a time when people lived in small villages and towns. It was a time when central governments were weak, and injustice was everywhere. Bandits attacked caravans, thieves stole livestock, and corrupt officials demanded money from poor farmers. In such conditions, people needed protection, but no one could provide it. So, they began to form small groups to protect their homes, fields, and families. These groups were initially friendly and fair. They kept the peace, resolved conflicts between neighbors, and punished those who broke the rules.
The creation of the circle.
One such group appeared in a small settlement on the island of Sicily. Its members called themselves the Circle. Why the Circle? Because they believed a circle was a symbol of unity, strength, and equality. All decisions were made together, with every member sitting around the same table. At first, the members of the circle didn't engage in any illegal activities. They acted as people's judges. If someone stole, the circle found the thief and made them return what they took. If someone hurt a woman or child, the circle punished the offender. People respected the circle and often turned to them for help. All decisions were made together, with every member sitting around the same table.
The first steps toward power.
Over time, things began to change, as more and more people asked the circle for help. Its members realized they could demand something in return for their services. At first, these were small tokens, food, wine, or favors. For example, if the circle protected someone's vineyard, the owner would give them part of the harvest. Gradually, these offerings turned into mandatory payments. People paid the circle to keep their homes, fields, and families safe. Some paid willingly because they appreciated the protection. Others paid out of fear, knowing that if they refused, the circle could turn against them.
Expanding influence.
As the circle grew stronger in their village, its members began to spread their influence to neighboring towns. In each new location, they established smaller groups that reported back to the main circle. These smaller groups had different names, but their goal was always the same: control. Control over people, resources, and most importantly, fear. To solidify their power, the circle began setting rules for the towns they controlled. For example, no one could go to the police or government without the circle's permission. All major decisions selling land, marriages, building projects had to go through the circle. In this way, the circle became a shadow government, ruling over people without holding any official title.
The emergence of leadership.
At first, all members of the circle saw themselves as equals. But over time, it became clear that such a complex structure needed a leader. The first leader was simply called the boss. The boss was a person of strong character, intelligence, and charisma. People both respected and feared him. He made the most important decisions, but always consulted the other members of the circle. The boss's power grew, and over time, he became the central figure in the circle's operations. This marked the transformation of the circle from a simple group of protectors into a powerful organization with a clear hierarchy.
The beginnings of illegal activities.
Initially, the circle focused only on protection and collecting money. But soon, they saw opportunities to make profits in other ways. For example, a farmer wanted to sell his wine in a neighboring town, but the road was dangerous, and bandits often attacked caravans. The circle offered to protect the farmer's goods in exchange for a percentage of his earnings. This was the start of what would later be known as organized crime. Later, the circle began controlling not just the protection, but also the goods themselves. If someone wanted to sell or buy something in the village, they first had to ask the circle for permission and pay a fee.
First conflicts with authorities.
Over time, official authorities began to notice the circle's influence. Governors and local police tried to investigate this group, but the circle was clever. They bribed officials, made secret deals, and used fear to keep their enemies at bay. The circle's power grew, and their influence spread to entire regions. At this point, the circle was no longer just a group of guardians. It had become something much bigger, the beginning of what we now call the Mafia.
The foundations of the Mafia.
The birth of the Mafia wasn't a single event, but a long process. It began with a simple desire to protect families and ended with the creation of a powerful structure based on fear, money, and control. These early years laid the foundation for all future Mafia organizations, which would eventually spread across the world.
How the Mafia works, structure, roles, and loyalty.
The Mafia is not just a group of people causing trouble. It is a carefully organized system with clear rules, levels of power, and responsibilities. Understanding how the Mafia operates is like looking at a well-run business, except this business works in the shadows and often breaks the law.
The family structure.
One thing that makes the Mafia unique is that it is often called a family. This is not just a name, it reflects the way the organization works. Members of the Mafia treat each other like brothers. Loyalty is the most important rule. Betrayal is unacceptable and often met with severe consequences. The Mafia operates on the idea that everyone must protect and support one another. The boss is like the father of the family, guiding and protecting his children. The underboss and capos act as older brothers, helping to manage the family. Soldiers are the younger siblings, following orders and doing the hard work. This sense of family creates strong bonds among members. It also makes it difficult for outsiders, such as the police, to break the group apart.
How orders are given.
In the Mafia, orders are not given directly or openly. Everything is done in secret to avoid being caught by the authorities. If the boss wants something done, he doesn't call the person directly. Instead, he tells the underboss, who then tells the capos. The capos pass the message down to the soldiers, who carry out the task. For example, if the boss wants a rival business shut down, he might say to the underboss, "I don't like the way they operate." The underboss knows what the boss means and gives instructions to the capos. By the time the message reaches the soldiers, it might sound like this: visit the business and make sure they stop causing problems. This system of indirect communication protects the higher-ranking members. If the police investigate, it's hard to trace any illegal actions back to the boss.
Rules and codes of conduct.
The Mafia is not just about power, it is about discipline and rules. Every member must follow these rules, or they risk severe punishment. Some of the most important rules include: 1. Loyalty. Members must be loyal to the Mafia, above all else, even their own families. If someone betrays the Mafia, they are considered a traitor and are often eliminated. 2. Secrecy. Members must never talk about Mafia business to outsiders, especially the police. This is called omerta, or the code of silence. 3. Respect. Everyone must show respect to their superiors, especially the boss. Disrespect is seen as a serious offense. 4. Obedience. Orders must be followed without question. A member who refuses to carry out an order loses trust and could face punishment. 5. Protection of the family. The Mafia always protects its members. If someone is arrested or harmed, the Mafia takes care of their family. These rules keep the Mafia united and strong. They ensure that everyone knows their role and responsibilities.
How money flows in the Mafia.
The Mafia operates like a business, and money is its lifeblood. There are many ways the Mafia earns money, both legal and illegal. 1. Protection rackets. The Mafia demands payments from businesses in exchange for protection. This means the Mafia will protect the business from thieves or competitors, but it also means the business must pay to avoid problems caused by the Mafia itself. 2. Illegal trades. The Mafia is involved in smuggling goods, selling drugs, and running illegal gambling operations. These activities bring in a lot of money. 3. Legitimate businesses. To hide their illegal earnings, the Mafia invests in legal businesses like restaurants, construction companies, and shops. These businesses make the Mafia's money look clean. 4. Loan sharking. The Mafia lends money to people who can't get loans from banks. These loans come with extremely high interest rates, and failure to repay can lead to serious consequences. All the money collected by soldiers and coppos is passed up the hierarchy. Each level keeps a portion of the money, but the largest share always goes to the boss.
Trust and loyalty, the core of the Mafia.
Trust is the foundation of the Mafia. Members must trust one another completely, or the organization falls apart. This trust is built through loyalty and shared experiences. When someone joins the Mafia, they go through a process called making their bones. This means proving their loyalty by completing a dangerous or difficult task, often illegal. Once they prove themselves, they are fully accepted into the family. Loyalty is not just expected, it is enforced. If a member betrays the Mafia, they face the ultimate punishment. This could mean losing their position, being exiled from the group, or even worse.
Fear and respect, tools of control.
The Mafia uses a combination of fear and respect to maintain control. Members respect the boss because he is strong, wise, and capable. At the same time, they fear him because they know the consequences of disobedience. This combination of fear and respect extends to the people outside the Mafia as well. Business owners pay protection money because they fear what might happen if they don't. Rivals stay quiet because they respect the Mafia's power.
The Mafia's code of silence.
One of the most important parts of the Mafia's culture is omerta, the code of silence. Members are taught from the beginning to speak about the Mafia to outsiders. Even if someone is arrested, they are expected to remain silent. Breaking omerta is seen as the ultimate betrayal. If a member talks to the police or reveals secrets, they are no longer part of the family. This strict code of silence makes it difficult for the authorities to gather evidence against the Mafia. It also creates a culture of loyalty and secrecy that keeps the organization strong. The Mafia operates like a shadow government. It has rules, ranks, and systems that allow it to control people and money while avoiding the authorities. From the boss to the soldiers, every member has a role to play. Loyalty, secrecy, and respect are the pillars of the organization. These elements make the Mafia more than just a group of criminals. They make it a powerful and lasting institution.
The fall of the Mafia.
The Mafia, once seen as an unstoppable force, has faced significant challenges over the years. Governments and law enforcement agencies around the world have worked tirelessly to weaken their power. While the Mafia is not completely gone, its influence has been greatly reduced in many regions. 1. The rise of law enforcement. In the early days, the Mafia operated with little interference from the police. Corruption was widespread, and many officials were either bribed or too afraid to act. However, this began to change in the 20th century when governments created special task forces to fight organized crime. 1. The rise of law enforcement. One of the biggest weapons against the Mafia has been RICO Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act in the United States. This law allowed prosecutors to target entire criminal organizations, not just individuals. For example, Mafia bosses could be charged for crimes committed by their subordinates. Witnesses could be offered protection in exchange for testifying against the Mafia. 2. Breaking the code of silence. The Mafia's greatest strength, its code of silence, or omerta, has also become its greatest weakness. Over time, some members began cooperating with law enforcement to avoid long prison sentences. These members, known as pentiti repentants, revealed secrets about the Mafia structure, operations, and key members. Their testimonies led to the arrest of many high-ranking mafia leaders. For example, in Italy, the testimony of Tommaso Buscetta, a former mafia member, helped authorities arrest hundreds of members of the Sicilian mafia. In the United States, famous mafia turncoats like Sammy the Bull Gravano provided crucial evidence against the Gambino family. The betrayal of Omerta has made the mafia more vulnerable to law enforcement. 3. Internal conflicts. As the mafia grew, internal conflicts began to weaken the organization. Rival families often fought for control of territories, businesses, and resources. These power struggles, known as mob wars, often resulted in violence and the deaths of key members. For example, the Costello Marise War in the United States during the 1930s was a bloody conflict between rival factions of the Italian-American Mafia. It ended with the rise of Lucky Luciano, who reorganized the Mafia into a more structured system. In Italy, the Second Mafia War in the 1980s was a brutal conflict that weakened the Sicilian Mafia's control. These internal disputes made it easier for law enforcement to infiltrate and dismantle mafia operations. 4. Public awareness and resistance. Over time, people began to see the harm caused by the mafia. Communities that once depended on the mafia for protection and support started resisting their influence. Public awareness campaigns, media coverage, and education programs helped change the perception of the mafia. In Italy, the murders of anti-mafia judges Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino in the 1990s sparked outrage across the country. Their deaths inspired massive protests and led to stronger laws against organized crime. Similarly, in the United States, movies and documentaries about the mafia, such as The Godfather and Goodfellas, helped expose the dark reality behind the romanticized image of mobsters. 5. Modern challenges. In the modern era, the mafia faces new challenges. Advances in technology have made it easier for law enforcement to track their activities. Surveillance cameras, wiretaps, and computer databases allow authorities to gather evidence more effectively. Globalization has also created competition for the mafia. Other criminal organizations, such as drug cartels and cybercrime syndicates, have taken over some of the mafia's traditional territories and businesses. For example, in the United States, Latin American cartels now dominate the drug trade, which was once controlled by the mafia. In Europe, cybercriminals have created new forms of crime that are harder for traditional mafias to exploit. These changes have forced the mafia to adapt, but they have also made it harder for them to maintain their power. The fall of the mafia is a story of perseverance by law enforcement, betrayal within the organization, and changing public attitudes. While the mafia still exists in some form, it is no longer the dominant force it once was. Today, the mafia operates more discreetly, focusing on money laundering, cybercrime, and smaller-scale operations. However, its legacy remains a powerful reminder of how dangerous organized crime can be and how important it is to fight against it.
The cultural legacy of the Mafia.
The mafia has left a profound mark on global culture. Despite its violent and illegal nature, the stories, symbols, and characters associated with the mafia have become deeply ingrained in literature, film, television, and even fashion. This paradoxical fascination with the mafia reveals the complexity of its cultural legacy. Romanticized in media, one of the reasons the mafia holds such a prominent place in popular culture is its portrayal in films and television. Classic movies like the Godfather trilogy, Goodfellas, and Scarface have presented the mafia as more than just a criminal organization. These films explore themes of loyalty, family, power, and betrayal, creating a sense of drama and depth that captivates audiences. Characters like Michael Corleone and Tony Montana are seen as tragic anti-heroes, combining ambition and ruthlessness with moments of vulnerability. This romanticized depiction often overshadows the brutal realities of organized crime, painting a picture of the Mafia as an almost noble or glamorous entity. The Mafia in literature. Beyond the screen, the Mafia has also inspired countless books and novels. Works like Mario Puzo's The Godfather and Roberto Saviano's Gomorrah delve into the inner workings of the Mafia, offering a mix of fiction and investigative journalism. These books have helped demystify the Mafia, showing both its human side and the destruction it causes. Music and art. The influence of the Mafia can also be found in music and art. Songs referencing the Mafia's lifestyle, power, and symbols appear in various genres, from jazz and opera to rap and hip-hop. In art, the Mafia is often depicted through symbolic imagery such as fedoras, cigars, or vintage cars, evoking the aura of secrecy and control. Fashion and style. The Mafia's influence extends to fashion. The sleek suits, fedoras, and polished shoes associated with mobsters have become iconic symbols of style and sophistication. Designers have often drawn inspiration from this aesthetic, incorporating elements of the Mafia look into their collections. The timeless appeal of this style reflects the paradox of the Mafia: brutal criminals with a veneer of elegance, fashion and style, tourism and cultural mythology. In places like Sicily, the Mafia's cultural impact has even extended to tourism. Visitors often seek out landmarks and stories connected to the Mafia's history, from infamous hideouts to locations used in iconic films. This has created a strange dynamic where the Mafia's dark past becomes a source of fascination for tourists, even as local communities work to move beyond its influence. Criticism and re-evaluation. While the Mafia has been romanticized in many ways, there's also been growing criticism of how its image is portrayed. Many argue that films and books glamorize organized crime, ignoring the pain and suffering it causes to victims and communities. Modern works, such as Gomorrah, take a more realistic approach, highlighting the brutality and corruption of the Mafia. The dual legacy. The cultural legacy of the Mafia is a dual-edged sword. On one hand, it has inspired some of the greatest works of art and entertainment, creating unforgettable stories and characters. On the other hand, this fascination risks trivializing the real harm caused by organized crime. The challenge is to appreciate the artistic value of these stories while remaining aware of their real-world implications. Conclusion. The Mafia's cultural legacy is both fascinating and controversial. It has left an indelible mark on films, literature, fashion, and even tourism, shaping how people think about power, loyalty, and betrayal. However, it is important to separate the myth from the reality, recognizing that behind the romanticized image lies a history of violence, corruption, and suffering. The Mafia may one day disappear, but its impact on culture will endure for generations to come.